It's a thought that keeps intelligence agencies awake at night. A thought that feels like something from a spy film, but isn't. When the Soviet Union crumbled, it wasn't just statues of Lenin that came crashing down. An entire system of control, built on fear and meticulous order, simply evaporated. In the chaos that followed, something went missing, something terrifying. We know the Soviet Union had an arsenal of around 27,000 tactical nuclear weapons. These weren't the giant missiles you see in parades. These were smaller, battlefield-ready devices. And when the dust settled, not all of them could be accounted for. The official line from Moscow has always been a firm denial. Every warhead, they insist, is safe. But the whispers persist. The numbers just don't quite add up. The end of the Cold War was meant to be a moment of collective relief, a deep breath after decades of holding it. But for a select group of people in Western intelligence, it was the start of a new, more insidious nightmare. The enemy was no longer a monolithic state with a clear chain of command. The enemy was now chaos itself. The idea that a nuclear weapon could fall into the hands of a non-state actor, a terrorist group, a rogue general, a shadowy syndicate, was no longer a hypothetical scenario. It was a clear and present danger. The Soviet military was in disarray, with soldiers going unpaid and guards abandoning their posts. It was the perfect storm for the unthinkable to happen. Imagine the scene. A sprawling, poorly guarded military base somewhere in the vastness of the former Soviet Union. The fences are rusted, the watchtowers empty. The term sounds like something from a James Bond film, a suitcase nuke. But these devices were very real. Known officially as Special Atomic Demolition Munitions, or SADMs. They were designed for sabotage. A small team of Spetsnaz commandos could carry one behind enemy lines, to destroy a bridge, to destroy a port, to destroy a command center. They were the ultimate tool of asymmetric warfare. The Soviet Union was believed to have produced many of these portable nuclear bombs. Each had an explosive yield of up to 1 kiloton, not enough to destroy a whole city, enough to make a square mile uninhabitable. The real mystery began in 1997. Alexander Lebed made a startling claim. In a US news interview, he said dozens were unaccounted for. Lebed was the former national security advisor to Boris Yeltsin. He would have had access to the country's most sensitive secrets. He said he'd been tasked with an inventory, and as many as 84 could not be located. His statement sent shockwaves. It was the first public confirmation from a high-ranking Russian official. Moscow reacted swiftly. The Defense and Atomic Energy Ministries denied the claims. They said no weapons were lost and everything was secure. They tried to discredit Lebed, but the genie was out of the bottle. His warning added credibility to hushed rumors and fragmented intelligence. Was he telling the truth, or using loose nukes as a political tool? In murky post-Soviet Russia, it was impossible to be certain. The chilling reality, we don't know for sure. To understand how a nuclear weapon could simply vanish, one must first understand the sheer, unadulterated chaos of Russia in the 1990s. The collapse of the Soviet Union was not a neat, orderly transition. It was an implosion. A superpower that had projected an image of invincible strength for half a century came apart at the seams. The command economy seized up, leading to hyperinflation and widespread shortages. Life savings were wiped out overnight. State institutions, including the once mighty Red Army, began to crumble from within. It was a period of profound national humiliation and desperation, a fertile ground for corruption and crime to flourish on an unprecedented scale. This wasn't just a political shift, it was the breakdown of a society. The military was hit particularly hard. Soldiers went months without pay. Officers went months without pay. Even generals went months without pay. They were seen selling their fuel, their equipment, and sometimes even their weapons just to feed their families. Discipline evaporated. Reports from the time paint a grim picture. Guards on nuclear sites so drunk they could barely stand, perimeter fences with huge holes in them, and sophisticated alarm systems disabled due to lack of maintenance or power. In this environment, the concept of a secure chain of command became a dark joke. The state had failed its guardians, leaving the world's deadliest weapons protected by demoralized and desperate men. This systemic breakdown created what intelligence analysts called the chaos doctrine. It wasn't an official policy, but an emergent reality. When the central authority is weak, power flows to those who are willing to seize it. This meant regional commanders, corrupt officials, and increasingly organized crime syndicates. The Russian mafia, or Bratva, grew exponentially in power and influence during this time. For them, everything was a commodity, and there was no commodity more valuable or more dangerous than the remnants of the Soviet nuclear arsenal. The most immediate and verifiable threat that emerged from the Soviet collapse, it wasn't the disappearance of fully assembled bombs, it was the leakage of nuclear materials, highly enriched uranium, weapons-grade plutonium. They began to appear on the international black market. This was not speculation, it was fact, confirmed by dozens of sting operations and seizures throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. Small-time smugglers, often former employees of nuclear facilities. They were caught trying to sell samples of radioactive material in makeshift containers, sometimes wrapped in plastic bags, or carried in lead-lined briefcases. It was a terrifyingly amateurish trade in the world's most dangerous substances. These incidents created a chilling map of proliferation routes. Seizures were made in Germany, in the Czech Republic, in Turkey, and in the former Soviet republics of Central Asia. In one famous case in 1994, German police intercepted a passenger flight from Moscow and arrested a smuggler carrying over 360 grams of weapons-grade plutonium-239. It was a tiny amount, but it was proof positive that the system had failed. The material was traced back to a Russian nuclear facility. For every smuggler who was caught, intelligence agencies wondered how many more had succeeded. It takes about 15 kilograms of highly enriched uranium to build a crude but effective nuclear bomb. The trickle of materials on the black market suggested a vast, unseen reservoir was being tapped. The sellers were often driven by simple desperation. Scientists and technicians from the once prestigious Soviet nuclear program found themselves unemployed or earning poverty-level wages. But the buyers were far more sinister. The uranium bazaar was open for business. The physical legacy of the Cold War is scattered across the vast territory of the former Soviet Union. It takes the form of ghost towns, decaying airfields, silent, empty missile silos. Places that were once at the nerve center of a global superpower are now just ruins, slowly being reclaimed by nature. Exploring these sites is like stepping into a post-apocalyptic film. The Semipalatinsk test site in Kazakhstan, nearly 500 nuclear detonations. After the collapse, the site was simply abandoned. Metal hunters descending on the site, stripping copper wiring and other metals from radioactive ruins. They had no understanding of the dangers. That lack of control extended to submarine bases on the Kola Peninsula. For Western intelligence agencies, the 1990s was a period of frantic, high-stakes activity. The primary mission of the Cold War, monitoring the Soviet military machine, was replaced by a new, more chaotic objective: finding the loose nukes. The CIA poured resources into what became known as threat reduction. MI6 poured resources into what became known as threat reduction. Other NATO intelligence services poured resources into what became known as threat reduction. It was a shadow war fought not with soldiers, but with spies, scientists, and diplomats. They had to navigate the treacherous political landscape of post-Soviet Russia, working with and sometimes against their former adversaries. The United States, through the Non-Lugar Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, provided billions of dollars to Russia and other former Soviet states. The money was earmarked to help dismantle old missiles, improve security at nuclear storage facilities, and provide alternative employment for out-of-work weapons scientists. It was an unprecedented partnership. American inspectors, who had once been the enemy, were now being invited into Russia's most secret nuclear cities. They helped install modern fences, advanced sensor systems, and establish robust accounting procedures for nuclear materials. But cooperation had its limits. The Russians were proud and often suspicious of American motives. They would only allow access to certain sites. This is where the spies came in. While diplomats and scientists worked in the open, intelligence officers worked in the shadows. They recruited sources within the Russian military and nuclear complex. They tried to get a true sense of the security situation. They tracked smuggling routes and monitored suspicious financial transactions. They tried to penetrate the criminal syndicates attempting to traffic in nuclear materials. They were looking for the needle in the haystack, credible intelligence about a specific missing weapon. The intelligence gathered during this period remains one of the most closely guarded secrets of the post-Cold War era. We know about the public successes like the Nunn-Lugar program. We know about the confirmed seizures of smuggled materials, but what we don't know is what the spies found. The spies chased shadows for a decade, and we may never know if they caught anything. The story of the missing Soviet nukes cannot be told without General Alexander Lebed. His 1997 revelation was a watershed moment. Lebed was no ordinary politician, a gruff paratrooper general, a veteran of Afghanistan, widely respected in the military. When he spoke, people listened. He said Yeltsin tasked him to account for suitcase-sized nuclear devices. He reported a shortfall, 84 out of 132. He had been secretary of the Russian Security Council. Lebed's warning was specific and detailed. Designed for terrorism, perfect for destroying infrastructure, made to look like suitcases. He said he had seen them himself. He warned they could be in the hands of criminal groups or rogue states. Their whereabouts unknown. This was not hypothetical. The Russian response targeted his credibility. Spokesman said he was confused, that he had mistaken training devices for real weapons. He died in a helicopter crash in 2002, taking secrets with him. The question hung unresolved. Brave truth teller or opportunist? No definitive proof exists. Western agencies never publicly confirmed the 84 claim, nor fully dismissed it. It remains the most powerful on-the-record testimony. It is an ominous warning that has never been silenced. Years have passed since the chaos of the 1990s. Russia is a different country now, with a strong central government and a renewed sense of national pride. The overt signs of collapse are gone. The military has been rebuilt. Security at nuclear sites has been significantly improved. Cooperative programs funded by the West played a big role. The official story: the window of vulnerability has closed. The uranium bazaar has been largely shut down. The arsenal is secure. It's tempting, comforting, to believe the danger has passed. The ghost in the arsenal seems exorcised, but this threat is unseen. If a nuclear weapon was stolen 2 or 3 decades ago, it might not have been used yet. Such a weapon isn't for a simple attack. It's the ultimate instrument of leverage. A non-state actor, a rogue state, would likely keep it hidden. An ace in the hole. They would wait for the perfect moment. A moment of maximum geopolitical crisis. No mushroom cloud today isn't proof of safety. It may just be proof of patience. The search continues, far from the public eye. Intelligence agencies monitor chatter, track suspicious individuals, and use radiation detectors at ports and borders. It's a vast, ongoing, thankless task. So we are left here, in the year 2025, with a mystery that has no neat conclusion. The story of the vanished Soviet warheads is a tapestry woven from credible fears, official denials, fragmentary evidence, and the chilling testimony of a man who is no longer here to answer our questions. We have the chaos of the 1990s, a confirmed black market in nuclear materials, and the logical possibility that in such a perfect storm, something larger could have slipped through the cracks. We have the abandoned bases, the rusting submarines, and the persistent whispers that contradict the polished official narrative of total control and security. It is a deeply unsettling state of affairs. The optimist will say the threat is overblown. They will argue that a nuclear weapon is a complex device that requires regular maintenance, that any stolen weapon would by now be an inert dud. They will point to the success of cooperative threat reduction programs and the lack of any definitive proof. They will say that General Lebed was mistaken or lying, and that the continued search is a waste of resources, a paranoid hangover from the Cold War. They will tell you to sleep soundly, because the guardians of the arsenals, both in Russia and the West, have done their job. The danger has been contained. The pragmatist, however, will point to the unknowns. They will remind you that the Soviet Union made tens of thousands of tactical nuclear weapons. An accounting error of even a fraction of 1% could mean dozens of missing devices. They will argue that Soviet military technology was designed to be robust and to last. They will ask whether we can be truly certain that every document was accurate, that every guard was loyal, that every desperate scientist resisted temptation. They will suggest that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The fact that we cannot prove a weapon is missing does not mean that it is safe. And so we end not with an answer, but with a question that hangs in the air, as potent and as menacing as the threat itself. It is a question that intelligence officers and world leaders must grapple with every single day. If General Lebed was right, if even a handful of these suitcase-sized bombs of annihilation did indeed vanish into the underworld during Russia's time of troubles, then where are they now? Who has them? Are they hidden in a mountain cave in Afghanistan? In a basement in a rogue state's capital? Or are they closer than we think, waiting in the shadows of one of our own cities? Who controls the ghost in the arsenal? And what exactly are they waiting for?